Hey everyone, it's Jen Fishburne. Welcome back to my show, Preterism Changes Everything. Let's see, yesterday we took a look at the creation of the Garden of Eden. So we found out that it's in the Middle East somewhere, but since it no longer exists, it's really not important for our studies at this time. So today we're going to see how God puts Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So let's start at Genesis 2:15, again my translation. The Elohim Yehovah took the man Adam and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. And the Elohim Yehovah commanded the man Adam, saying, Of every tree of the garden eating you will eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you will not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, dying you shall die. So, let's look at just a few words here. The first one we're going to look at is the word for work. So Adam actually was put in the Garden of Eden to work. Sometimes we don't think of it. Most of your Bibles will probably say tend. In a way that is, but I think it's a little bit stronger of a word there. Abad is the Hebrew. It also has the same the word abad is used for work, for serve, and for worship. And so let's take a look at a couple other passages where the same word abad is used. Exodus 9:1, Then Jehovah said to Moses, Go into Pharaoh and say to him, Thus says Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. Serve there is abad. It is the same word as the way that Adam served or worked in the garden. All right, then another one in Exodus 23, verse 25. You shall serve, abad, Jehovah your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from among you. So again, that's a form of serve that is like worship. So Jehovah was telling them, you're not going to serve the other gods, but you are going to serve me. Any kind of work that was done in the tabernacle, the temple, was always called service. We actually still use that word today in politics. A public servant, they're supposed to be here to serve the rest of us. Now that doesn't actually end up happening that way, but that is the same word, the same use, the same form that we have today. And then one more, because I always like to look at three. Deuteronomy 6:13. It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him only shall you worship, and by his name you shall swear. So worship, serve, work are all from the same Hebrew word abad. And so they all pretty much mean the same thing. When I first learned this, I had like an aha moment that, we are created to work. And every time we work, we're actually worshiping God. It is a form of worship to work, to labor. And then God says, hey, take one day off. So we've kind of got it backward in our thinking, where we think that we go to work 5 or 6 days a week, depending on what you do. And then some people will take one day of rest to go to church and think that they're worshiping God on that. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the concept that we see at all in the Bible here. So when you're working, if you think of it as actually worshiping God, it might just totally change your perspective on how you do your job or your business or your work, even, around the house or whatever it is that you do. So just keep that in mind. That's what Adam was doing. When Adam was working in the garden, he was worshiping God. All right, so that's just one of my favorites. I love that one. All right, now in this, we saw two strange phrases here. Eating you will eat, and dying you shall die. Or you will die, as it should be. Eating you will eat, and dying you will die. So what is that? Those in the Hebrew are two verbs that are side by side. So it really says, for the first one, a kol to kol, it says eat. And then for the dying you shall die is muth to muth, die. So it's two verbs that are put together side by side. And when they do that in the Hebrew, it's a Hebrew idiom, basically. It's a way of really intensifying it and giving it a heavy emphasis and saying it's an absolute. It's kind of like putting it in bold text because they didn't have bold text back then. So it's just a real intense, it's the most intense form of that word that you can possibly get. And we don't actually have a word in English that would that we could use to translate from these. So I just kind of literally did it that way. But what it really means here with the eating one, it was be like eat and eat and eat. There's as much as you can eat, all right? And for the dying one, God was telling Adam, you will die. It's an absolute, you will die. And that death, that word for death, muth, there, it always means physical death. That's just what it means, physical death. You're going to die a physical death. And usually, often it means an early death. So many, many, many times it's used, it means an early death. So in this case, Jehovah is telling Adam that he's going to die an early death. And we'll talk about day later when we actually get to that part and that happens, okay? All right, let's go on to the next section here. Genesis 2:18. This one's a little bit longer, and then we'll come back and take a look at a few words and see what it all means. Then the Elohim Yehovah said, "It is not good that the man Adam should be alone. I will make him a helper in front of him." Now out of the ground, the dust, the Elohim Yehovah had formed every living being of the field and every flying creature, the souls, of the skies, and brought them to the man Adam to see what he would call them. Notice he didn't include the fish. And whatever the man Adam called every living soul, that was its name. The man Adam gave names to all animals and to the birds of the skies and to every living being of the field. But Adam did not find a helper in front of him. So the Elohim Yehovah caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man Adam, and while he slept, he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh underneath it. And the Elohim Yehovah built the rib, which he had taken from the man Adam, into a woman, and brought her to the man Adam. Then the man Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she is taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed." So let's go back up to the beginning of that section now, and the word helper. Yehovah says he's going to make a helper in front of Adam. So Adam, it's not good for the man Adam to be alone. So now I put Adam in all of these places. They all say man, but pretty soon we're going to start seeing where there's a different word used for man. And so we want to make sure that we separate these. So really we could just have Adam in every single one of these places, because that's really what it's talking about. But it also means, Adam also means mankind, as we've talked about before, and or man in general, men specifically. And it is not good that the man should be alone. I think this is a universal principle. So I realize that I'm not the only divorced one here, who, you know, of all the people who are listening and watching these, but still it is not good for man to be alone. Now, I don't think that it's necessarily good for women to be alone either, but in this particular passage, that's what it's saying. And we can just see that it bears out in every situation. You just look at the people around you that you know, and you can say, hey, that single guy over there needs a wife. So that's just the way that God made it. God made it for man and woman to be together. He didn't make it for us to be alone, even though that's the situation where I'm at right now. It's a situation where I know a lot of my friends are at right now, but that's really not the way that is best for us. All right, so that's a universal principle. And anyway, Jehovah said, I will make him a helper in front of him. So the word helper there, let's take a look at that. That is Ezer in Hebrew. A lot of your versions will say helpmate or helpmeet, and that's been made into like almost a whole movement where the woman is relegated to the role of helper. And we use that word like we would a little kid. Are you going to be my helper? You know, my 2-year-old, I need my little helper with me. It's not that kind of a helper at all. So this kind of a helper is the same word that we see for God when he helps us. And it's actually more of a position of strength. So let's take a look at a couple passages. We've got 3 of them here in Psalms that we're going to look at. And there's a whole bunch of them, but we just need 3 to get an idea of how this word is used. So Psalm 33:20, our soul waits for Jehovah. He is our help and our shield. So they're waiting for someone to help them. They need help from the Lord. They need help from Jehovah. This is the same kind of help that the woman is going to provide to the man. Psalm 70 verse 5, but I am poor and needy. Hasten to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. Jehovah, do not delay. So you are my help. He's begging God for help, basically. Help me, help me. Same word for help. That's the woman's role. Psalm 121:2. My help comes from Jehovah who made heaven and earth. So I like that one because it combines the creation with the idea that he is the strength and the help there that each one of us needs. So I noticed that it said that you may have noticed that I said helper in front of him, not a helpmate suitable for him. Now, probably your translation says something like a helpmate or helper suitable for him. No, that's not it at all. So neged is the word in Hebrew that is often translated suitable. It actually means in front of. In front of. That's really literally in front of him. So he could see her. She was to be his strength and help Adam in the same way that the Lord helps us. It was a position of strength, not of weakness. All right. So then Jehovah made all of those living souls, all those animals out of the ground. The word for ground there is Adamah, and that's just really the dirt, which is different from the word for land or earth, which are translated interchangeably. They don't always mean the same thing, but this is ground. This is dirt. All right, so all of the animals are made out of dirt. Rib. All right, let's take a look at rib now. So so first of all, Adam, let's take a look here. Adam named all of these different animals. I don't understand why some people will mock this part of the story, saying that Adam couldn't possibly have come up with all of those names in one day. First of all, it wasn't all the species, it was all the kinds. So we don't know how many that was, but it definitely wasn't in the zillions and millions and quadrillions and all that kind of stuff. So there was obviously a number that was reasonable for him to come up with these names. And there was a purpose for that. I mean, God paraded all of these animals in front of Adam, in front of. And he did not see an animal that matched him and that would be able to help him. So it would have been land animals and flying creatures, birds, butterflies, insects, that kind of stuff. So yeah, he had enough time. If we look at the lists of animals that we see in the Bible, I think those would give us a pretty good indication of the kinds of animals that Adam would have named. And I should have looked that up, but I'm going to guess it's about a couple hundred, 200 or 300 at the very most. Probably not even that much, maybe 200. And so I think that's a reasonable amount. Did God help Adam name them? Well, Adam, I think, was probably one of the most genius people ever to live because he was created perfect. So God probably endowed him with the gift of being able to name them. And I'm sure he named them according to their abilities in Hebrew, not in English. All right. So, all right. So then after he named everything, he couldn't find a helper in front of him. So then Jehovah caused him to go into a deep sleep, and he took one of his ribs. Now the word for ribs there is selah, and that means more like a side chamber. So it can be a rib, but it's also just, it's like a section on the side. So I believe it's the same place that the last Adam had a spear driven into his side. So there's definitely a type anti-type going on there. All right, so then it was after he took the rib out from Adam, it says that he closed up the flesh underneath it. Your Bible probably says something a little bit different, but it's close enough. So the flesh there is basar. That always means flesh, and there's 270 times that we find that in the Old Testament, and it just means flesh, like they all do. Okay, so the he closed up the flesh underneath of it. That was a good one. All right. And then it says in verse 22, and Jehovah built the rib, which he had taken from Adam, into a woman and brought her to Adam. So it's interesting, the word there that I have translated built is banah. It's not the same word as create or make that we've seen so far in all of the other passages, but this one is literally built, to build. And then Adam says, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." So I looked up the word for now, and in Hebrew it's palm, and it actually means a foot or an anvil, which they're both shaped the same way, right? So then an anvil is used, it can be used like it's struck by a hammer. So I was thinking about this. I thought, why would they say now instead of anvil? And it says, "This is now bone of my bones," or "This is anvil, bone of my bones." So this is foot, bone of my bones. We know it's not his foot. We know it's his side. We know it's a rib. But the anvil can be used to connotate being struck by a hammer. And I don't know if that word is used on purpose in conjunction with the word built, because he built the woman out of the rib. Did he do it like he would with a hammer? I really don't know, but the word is very, very interesting. They have it translated as now. And of course, in the list of possible translations, that's what they say, but that's because that's just how they translated it there. So that was an interesting one for me, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I have a feeling that the two words are related. Built and anvil are related there. All right, so where'd it go? "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." Now, man here is not Adam. This man is Ish, and the word for woman is Isha. So Isha is out of man. So now when we see the words Ish, basically Ish and Isha, we know that that is just a generic man and woman, but Adam is talking about Adam, or a representative of all mankind. All right, therefore, I did all that all. "The man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife." I kind of like that word a little bit better. I think it's a clearer picture of what it should be, and they shall become one flesh. So they started as one flesh, right? Adam was one flesh, and then Eve was taken out of him. So now his flesh was divided into two, and then the two came back together and they became one flesh again. So every time a man and a woman are united, hopefully in marriage, then they become one flesh. And that is a picture of the creation of Adam and Eve over and over and over and over again. And I just think that's a beautiful picture. "And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed." And that word naked means naked. And it doesn't mean that they had their eyes closed. It doesn't mean that they were spiritually dumb. It doesn't mean any of that kind of stuff. It just really means that they were naked. They didn't have any clothes on and they weren't ashamed about it. So let's see here. You know, when we look at this last little section here, God's best for us is to leave our parents, to cleave to our spouse, and to become one flesh. That is the ultimate plan for all mankind, both now and then. Anything else causes so much pain and suffering, but God is still the ultimate healer, and He can heal our broken hearts. And I think He's also a God of second chances. So if you are not in a situation where you are still with the person that you were married to, or where you first became one flesh with, then know that God is still, I believe, in the business of healing. And whether that relationship is restored or not, or whether He gives you a new relationship, then I believe that that is possible. And so don't look in the past. Always look forward to the future. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.